What is going on, everybody? Today we are ranking NFL fan bases. I did this yesterday, but I don't know if any of you guys use OBS. It does this fun thing sometimes where it'll just like randomly just mute. So the whole video, I just sat here and yapped, and not a word you can hear. It was entirely muted. So this would have came out Monday. Now it's going to come out Tuesday. But we're re-recording it. It was only like 20 minutes. I can give up 20 minutes to go over fan bases. I know what I said about every single one of them because my opinions are pretty firm. These are all based off my experiences with these fan bases and what I've heard and what I've seen. This doesn't mean every single person who likes whatever team acts like this. You know what I mean? But yeah, this is just going to be a fun little video to make. The NFL season's over. I know you miss it. I miss it. And yeah. Let me know what you think down below, and let's get into this tier list. This is our list. The worst. These are going to be for the 3 teams that I think have the worst fan bases from my experience. The Copers. These are the people who make a million excuses for their teams. These are like the playoff chokers, and these fan bases I find a little bit annoying. Spoiled. This is going to be exclusively for 2 teams that really have only seen success over these last couple decades. Chill, which is just like a fan base that, like, you know, if they get in the playoffs, they'd be really happy. If they don't, they're like, I still support my team. Been through a lot are teams that have been struggling for a minute, but have seen a little success. And then loyal. These are the people that just love these dumpster fire teams, but they aren't going to switch up no matter what. So, starting off with the Cardinals. The Cardinals, I would say, is a chill fan base. I don't really know a lot of Cardinal fans, but their team fits that criteria pretty well. They're really hit or miss most of the time. Sometimes they're a decent team, and then sometimes they're trash. Lately, they've been pretty trash. I feel like their fan base is pretty chill with, you know, what's going on. May have a bright future. I don't know. Falcons. I'd say, frankly, I think they've been through a lot. And hear me out. I get that they went to the Super Bowl in 2016. I believe it was 2016. And obviously choked. And on top of that, they have probably the most talented team in the NFC South. And somehow managed to go like 8 and 9, 9 and 8 every season, despite how much talent they have on their team. So I feel like this fan base has been through a lot, and I don't think they're like super toxic, in my opinion. Wow, well, this is a Coper. Baltimore Ravens. You guys are Copers. You're going to talk about how good Lamar is. You know, he got his MVPs, all that. The team's great. But you guys do nothing in the playoffs, and you're going to talk your trash regardless. So I guess in that aspect, you're pretty loyal. But if Lamar ever left that team, you probably wouldn't be. So from my experience, a lot of Baltimore fans, to me, kind of cope a bit. The Bills are in a same boat. They will blame everything on anyone on that team unless their name is Josh Allen. And I hate to break it to you, Josh Allen has bad games just like any other quarterback in the league. There's a lot of coping. Frankly, the franchise has been through a lot, especially in recent years. Actually, even, you know, 4 Super Bowls in a row and lost. And then now they're just can't make it past the Chiefs in the playoffs, and then the Chiefs didn't make it this year, and then they still found a way to lose, and obviously they're still coping about the Chiefs voodoo magic from a couple years ago, and then they're coping about the Broncos call, and then, you know, fan base copes a lot, in my opinion. Panthers. I think the fan base is chill at this point because I think they're on an upward trajectory, especially making the playoffs this year. Obviously, they lost, but I think a lot of Panther fans were really happy to see the improvement this team made. So I feel like overall the Panthers fan base is relatively chill. The Bears. The Bears have been through a lot. If you manage to stick with the Bears after all these years with like Justin Fields and all these other bad quarterbacks and never had a 4,000-yard passer, this fan base has been through a lot. And obviously they're on an upward trajectory too, with they actually made the playoffs this year and actually looked pretty decent. So I think this fan base has been through a lot, but I think they have a decently bright future. This is such a coping fan base. Uh, I feel like a lot of these Bengal fans just came from like 2022, whenever the Bengals were actually a good team. And since then, they're making every excuse in the world to explain why they don't make it. And granted, they have been pretty unlucky. But this fan base just copes so much. It is such a coping fan base. They don't do anything. They don't even make the playoffs. I feel like a lot of these fans, they were just big fans in 2022, hopped on the bandwagon, and now they're just kind of like, eh. Joe Burrow is still top one in the league. Browns, loyal. That is such a loyal fan base because that team has been bad forever. I mean, they had one playoff win a couple of years ago, and since then I think they made the playoffs once. I think it was 2023, but they didn't do anything. But I feel like the Browns fan base is pretty loyal. I actually personally like the Browns. My team is the Chiefs, so I'll let you know that. I'm gonna try not to be biased. Obviously, there's gonna be some, uh, but I feel like Browns fans are very loyal because this is one of the historically worst franchises. So I feel like you gotta be pretty loyal to be a Cleveland Brown fan. Cowboys. Their reputation precedes them. Cowboy fans are probably the most delusional fans in the NFL, from my experience. Uh, I don't even necessarily like. I'm not a Dak hater. I think the fan base is what ruins the Cowboys for me. Every year is their year until they don't make it, and then they're going to start coping. But I think that they cope just a little harder than these teams because these teams have actually seen a little bit of success recently. You got to turn on VCR to watch theirs. So, Broncos. I'm a Chiefs fan. This is the division rival. I genuinely think Bronco fans are pretty chill. I don't have an issue with Bronco fans. Uh, I feel like most people who like the Broncos, it was like their dad's favorite team. Like the Broncos and the Packers, their dads love these teams. So they're like, oh, I'll rock with them. Uh, the Broncos, they're very hit or miss depending on the year. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. It feels like they're more good than they are bad. I like competition in the division, so I don't have an issue with the Broncos being good now. But I think Bronco fans are relatively chill. I don't really have a negative thing to say about them. That is like the division rival I have the least problems with when it comes to the fans. Lions have been through a lot. You know what? I'm gonna give them loyal actually. And here's my reasoning. Outside of 2 years recently where they've been good, they were horrible forever, and then they make the NFC Championship, and then they get last in the division. Like these fans were finally seeing success, and then boom, punched in the face. So I'd say Lion fans have to be pretty loyal. Other than obviously there's bandwagons who jumped on, the wagon 2 years ago probably. But I feel like real Lions fans, they've been through a lot. They're loyal. Packers. Packer fans are borderline copers. They really haven't had too much success after Rodgers. I mean, I get they made the playoffs, but they really haven't done a lot. In my opinion, that fan base does cope a bit, and that's the fan base I think is the most toxic in the NFC uh, North. I think that's the division they're in. Pretty sure it's NFC North. So yeah, I think the Packers are a little bit copers. They talk a lot of trash to their division rivals. They obviously hate the Bears, but they also historically own the Bears. So Texan fans, I feel like, are relatively chill. They have had some high highs and some low lows, and they've been having some highs outside of C.J. Stroud forgetting how to play football, which I don't know what happened to him, man. He was so good his rookie year, but nah, I think Texan fans are pretty chill. I like the Texans too. So Colts. I feel like Colt fans are pretty chill too. I don't think I know a Colts fan. Like I swear that's like a rare fan base. They just always seem to be a decent team. That's pretty much the best way to describe the Colts. They seem to be a decent team year in and year out. This year they had so much hope, and then it just got punched in the face. You can borderline say they've been through a lot, but they did have some good years of Manning. So Jaguars. I'm leaning towards chill, but they're borderline copers. Uh, I think these guys are just happy to make the playoffs when they do, and they just want to watch Prince Lawrence do his thing. I don't think Jacksonville fans are expecting a Super Bowl anytime soon, but I think they're just happy that their team is now like a year in, year out contender for the AFC South. So I think Jacksonville fans are pretty chill. All right, this is our first spoiled team. As a Chiefs fan, I can say this. We have had so much success in recent years. We've been to so many Super Bowls. I believe 5 out of the last 7, and we won 3. I cannot sit here and be that upset that we missed the playoffs whenever there's teams like this who would love just a wild card spot. Uh, I've been spoiled out of my mind. You can call me a bandwagon. I grew up in the state where they are, so take that as you will. Always been a Chiefs fan. But our fan base is definitely, we're like the spoiled princess. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's another fan base that's going on here. You already know who it is. But we're, one of the 2 dynasties over the last 2 decades. We've been very blessed as a fan base. So Raiders. I do not like the Raiders fan base as a Chiefs fan. However, they're pretty loyal. That team has not been good for a very long time, and yet they will still sit there and talk trash to Chiefs fans who own them, and they mean it full. I mean, they mean it. They're forward. These guys are gonna go dressed up all crazy. Raider fans, while I don't really like you as a division rival, you guys are freaking loyal because your team is not good, but you talk a lot of trash. So, in a sense, I respect it. Chargers. This is the coping fan base. This team is usually a playoff contender, especially since they got Herbert and they don't ever do anything. But they're going to sit here and argue that Herbert's top 5 despite not doing anything. This fan base copes like crazy. They always have an excuse. So, Rams. I think the Rams fan base is pretty chill. Their team's always been pretty good. I know a lot of people from Missouri obviously don't love the Rams because they moved, but like frankly, I wouldn't want to play football in St. Louis either, as a person from Missouri. So I think the Rams, pretty chill fan base. I don't see them talking a lot of trash. I think they are. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people hate anyone in this division outside of the Niners, which we'll get to them. The Dolphins. I think they're pretty chill. From my experience, they're pretty down to earth. They realize that Tua is not that guy, and that their team, they're kind of like the Lions in a sense, but they've been historically a little bit better. So I think Dolphin fans are pretty down to earth. They pretty much understand what's going on. I think Dolphin fans are chill. Vikings. This is a very chill fan base too. I mean, these guys are loyal to the bone, and they've seen a lot of good years. They've seen some down years, but their fans just love the game. I don't see them doing a lot of toxic things online or anything. I think Vikings fans are pretty chill. Borderline loyal because they literally had a 14-win season with Sam Darnold, and then they let him walk for a rookie that hadn't played a snap. And now they're back to looking pretty rough. So, Viking fans, you're pretty chill, and I borderline want to say you've been through a lot. Then we have the Patriots, the other spoiled franchise. They were supposed to be bad, and then they got another good quarterback. So now they're back to maybe being back to their dynasty. I don't know. We'll see. They didn't look good in the playoffs, but they look good in the regular season. So, as a Chiefs fan, us Chief and Patriot fans, we've seen a lot of good football, and we've seen a lot of winning. We are the princesses. We are the spoiled fan bases. Saints. I'd say they're chill. They have a lot of high hopes right now. Shuck looked pretty good at the end of the year. They may be contenders for the South next year. I don't know. The division's weird. And, yeah. They had some good years with Breeze, but after that, they've been pretty lackluster. So, I think the fan base is pretty chill, and they know what their team is. They know what their identity is. And they would probably be thrilled with a wild card spot. So, Giant fans, I'd say you've been through a lot, but you had some good years with Eli. So, but you're on an upward trajectory. You're probably relatively happy with all the young stars you guys got. I think Giants fans they've been through a lot, but I think they would be thrilled with a wild card spot as well. So, Jets, I don't see how you could like this. No bandwagon. There's no bandwagon for the Jets. There's not. They've been terrible for years, like so long, and they had like one of the worst defenses of all time just last year. If you're a Jets fan, you gotta be loyal. This is the worst fan base in the NFL. I don't think anyone's arguing that. These are the guys that are going to burn down Philadelphia if they win, or burn down Philadelphia if they lose. I've seen them I've not seen a fan base do so many wild things, even close to as the Philadelphia Eagles. Their fan base, terrible. I don't like their fan base at all. Steelers. You guys are copers. I'll be honest with you. You're borderline spoiled because you haven't seen a losing season in a while, but you guys never do anything. This team is going to go 9-8 every season, make the playoffs and do nothing. That is the Steelers' identity. They're going to make a million excuses. They are copers. Niners, I would argue, is another unbearable fan base. They talk a lot of smack. They've made a lot of Super Bowls in these last couple of years, and they haven't done a thing. And granted, they have had a lot of injuries, so frankly, they can cope a bit. But they have had super team after super team, and they just can't get it done. Their fans talk the most trash. They're going to bring up those Super Bowls that you also have to turn a VCR on for. I think Niner fans are probably the third worst fan base in the league. Seahawks. I've always been chill with the Seahawks. Obviously, they're going to have some bandwagon fans now because this team was so good last year. But I've never had an issue with Seahawks. I always thought their fan base was pretty chill. They've also always been pretty passionate, but not like in a way to where you're just like, I can't stand them. I'd say Seahawks fans are pretty chill. Buccaneers. Borderline copers, but I think they got a relatively chill fan base. I mean, they were bad for so long until Brady came there and really turned them around. I think they're pretty chill. I'm sure they like to see a playoff win because, once again, they usually make the playoffs and don't do anything. But I feel like most Buccaneer fans, I haven't really had an issue with them. And I don't feel like there's that many. Titans. You guys have been through quite a bit, to be honest with you. You guys had a good playoff push a couple of years ago. Obviously, you lost your franchise player in Henry. And now, maybe Cam Ward's that guy, we'll see, but you guys were still really bad last year. The Titans have been through a lot, so they gotta be relatively loyal. And then the Commanders. You guys have also been through a lot. This team was bad for years. They didn't even have a name for like a whole season. They had one really good year, made an NFC playoff push, and then the next year they went right back to being bad. This team, they just want to see a little bit of consistency. Because last time they were real dominant, I also feel like it was probably the 90s, early 2000s. Commander fans, you're pretty freaking loyal in my opinion. But you've been through a lot because you were actually seeing success and then just immediately right back to rock bottom. You're kind of like the Lions in that sense. But yeah, this is my list. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with. I imagine if your fan base is where you don't want it to be, you probably don't agree with that take, which is fine. That's just my experience. And I'm not saying if you're a Philadelphia Eagle fan, you're necessarily a terrible person. But a lot of what I've seen is I don't agree with a lot of things they do. But this is my list. Let me know how you feel down below. I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.